Alright, so first and foremost, I want to give all glory and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Hakodash. Also, I would like to give double honors to the apostles and the elders of GMS who taught me this truth. Peace and salutations to the Lord's elect and the 1/3. I'm the brother Barak. And Lord willing, this will be another edifying lesson. And, title of this lesson was going to be This Man's World is Coming to an End. Right? Because it really is, There's nothing really much else left besides what? 4 prophecies, and, they're all basically intertwined with each other, right? This is the book of Romans 13:11. It says, "And that knowing the time, that is now a high time to awaken out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we first believed." So, that's it. We're getting close, man. We're getting close to, the end of this man's rulership. But, the scriptures say, right when he's about to fill his belly, the Lord shall cast his fury and rain upon him while he's still eating, right? So, right when this devil is about to, try to chip everybody up, try to, go on his last rampage, that's when the Lord's going to come back to destroy this whole fucking place, right? And then Lord willing, by then we're going to get beamed up into these new spiritual bodies, right? Because this flesh is just a bodily corpse. It's just a temporary vessel, right? It's just like a rag doll compared to what how we're actually supposed to look like, right? But this man's kingdom is about to get destroyed, right? He has AI coming out to replace people's jobs, right? AI's got to a point where it can now teach itself, right? You have the digital ID being implemented gradually, or to say DID, and they don't even like us talking about that, so we have to speak in codes, right? You have these tiny rat hats buying up TikTok, right? So the truth is getting basically cut off. It's going to be censored by next year, and Lord willing, we don't know, but who knows, by next year, they might start cracking down completely on, to where no one else is going to be able to get this truth besides those who already have it. And I say Lord willing because, people had their chance to get this prophecy, this truth, right? But it's going to be sacred, right? This famine of the war is going to happen. And I also say Lord willing because it just brings us closer to that day of judgment, right? This is the book of Habakkuk 2:6. It says, "Shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, Woe to him that increases that which is not his, how long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay." Now, you go back into that word, thick clay, it basically means debt. And that's talking about Babylon, man, and, Esau's kingdom. He's in such a, America is in such a debt right now, It's only an option is just to collapse, right? And you're seeing the beginning stages of the collapse, right? But people can no longer live in houses, right? You have apartments. If you want a house, $800 rent. You'll get a fucking shed, right? A shed in somebody's backyard. $2,000 a month. Not even. $3,000 a month. You're getting a fucking 2 bedrooms, a 2-bedroom apartment. Numbers completely blown out of proportion. And obviously this is depending on where you live. It can be way more, way less, right? This is just from my experience, and this was from a few years ago, so it's definitely gotten worse since, right? But this America is in thick clay, right? And what else you seeing? You're seeing the downfall of, which I've done many lessons about, right? of downfall of, you know, the marriages, downfall of women, right? There's no more EBT, or they're cutting that off slowly. And even if they don't cut it off completely, it's still part of the prophecy, right? And, you know, you're seeing this man's kingdom is finished, man. No matter, even if it lasts another 5 years or so, or however long, you know, we're in this fucking place for, right? You know, it's not gonna be a good period. You know, you know, that's why you see all these people making these videos. You know, those days of those, you know, days where you know, peaking days, they're over. You know, people like to call, you know, the 2000s, the 90s, the early 2000s, you know, the good days, right? You know, the 2010s, right? People were saying, people like to dwell upon the past, right? But, you know, but now they're complaining. People are complaining. Everything is just, there's nothing to live for, and that's the spirit these people are in, man. Because, you know, what does the scripture say? It says, you know, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn, right? And people are mourning right now. You know, people want to die, man. You know, and it's just, you know, this man, he's finished, and it pisses me off because who do you see in power? You see a lot of wicked people, man, right? You see a lot of these cucks in power, right? These, you know, sheiks, you know, like that like to get shit on, right? They like to get shit on. You know, they might be, you know, into some weird stuff like cannibalism, pooping on, getting defecated on. They might be into, you know, all sorts of things, and these are the people with the most money, you know, the most fucking money, the most status, right? They might be extremely good at sports. You know, they might be the people you least expect, and these people are, you know, the people that have the most power and money on this side, right? And that it just really pisses us off, man, to see that. But, you know, that's cool because, you know, this is not our world anyway, right? The scriptures say this place is not our place of rest, right? You know, so you know, fuck this world, man. You know, and if you're watching this, I have a friend who was saying, you know, he wants, you know, something to look forward to, right? And you know, what you should really be looking forward to is what? Feeding the sheep of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, right? And what does the Lord command us to do? Let's bring that out. There's a book of John 21, and verse 17. It says, he said unto him the third time, Simon, son of Jonah, lovest thou me? Peter was grieved because he said unto him the third time, lovest thou me? And he said unto him, Lord, thou knowest all things. Thou knowest that I love thee. And Yahushua said unto him, feed my sheep. Right? So we're supposed to be feeding the sheep of Yahweh Shem Yahushua if we're truly sincere about this, right? And that starts off by doing lessons, doing camp, you know, tuning in, reposting other brothers' lessons, right? And of course, spreading the correct doctrine, right? Because, you know, you have to have a foundation in this thing. You can't just be camp hopping, you know, trying to mix a bunch of different doctrines into something, you know. You have to be firm in what you believe in, right? Because there's only one truth, right? The truth isn't just a bunch of different things. You know, the truth isn't 5 different names, right? Truth isn't, you know, how you say it, you know, 5 different, what's the word? You know, beliefs, right? No, the truth is there's one truth, right? There's no middle ground. That's why Yahushua spoke about, you know, if you're lukewarm, he's gonna spit you out of his mouth, right? You know, we're not supposed to be hot. You know, Salaki, we're not supposed to be, you know, hot and cold at the same time. You know, we're supposed to be hot for the truth. You know, warm. You know, on fire, right? Not in the middle, right? We're not supposed to be, doing all these things. Just worried about the world, man. Fuck this world. You know, what the fuck does this world have to offer? It's the same fucking bullshit every day. You know, the same bread and circus, same folly, right? You start to see it over and over again. You know, and even these, you know, even these people that are in the world, they're starting to, you know, even if they don't have the truth, right? As I said previously, they're starting to complain. You know, everything has just gotten so boring, right? You know, and people's brains are just completely messed up nowadays, right? You got to be careful with this, you know, even all these distractions, you know, social media, you know, like you got people, you're able to consume thousands of pieces of content within, you know, minutes, right? Within like a few hours, right? You know, so it will happen. It made people's, you know, brains all fucked up. You know, they call it a dopamine receptor, right? Where, you know, they wake up and they start just scrolling, and then you know they don't want to do anything the rest of the day because their brain's just so fried with all this like clutter. So you got to be careful too, because these are things that cause you to be, you know, a sluggard, right? But, you know, anyway, going back to the verse, we're supposed to be feeding the sheep, right? Even feeding the sheep before we feed ourselves, right? You know, put this truth as, you know, your top priority. Don't be like just putting it off to the side, right? Just saying, I'll think about it later, right? Because that's a lukewarm mentality. You know what I'm saying? That's just, you know, that's what the world thinks, right? And, you know, if you're hearing this, you're already part of that small number of people that are going to understand this truth, right? Because our videos don't get that many views, right? You know, that's why, you know, the Lord, he's only dealing with his elect, right? So there's the Lord didn't choose everybody for this, you know, for this truth. You know what I'm saying? Most of these people are in the world, and they're going to be stuck in the world, right? Till those nuclear missiles hit. But, you know, this whole world, man, it's done. You know, hopefully by 2026, and I say Lord willing, you know, hopefully, you know, we're out of this fucking place. It's over, right? Because that's what we need. You know, we need to just get the fuck out of here, right? And that time period is coming. I can say that, you know, right now. Why? Because, you know, that famine of war is gonna hit. They're gonna block out all these scriptures on social media, right? No one's gonna be able to, you know, get this word in now. You know, even, and I said it in one of the other lessons, I believe it was a lesson with Brother Selah. You have a lot of these apocalypse movies, right? And they'll often have somebody, you know, everybody will be panicking that one guy knows the scriptures, one knows the Bible, right? And it's because, you know, these directors in Hollywood, they have to tell you the truth, right? And they know, you know, the Bible is the truth, right? Everybody else is just, we're the only people that get scoffed at. You know, the real true biblical Hebrew Israelites, right? And that's starting now with you so-called blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, and you Israelite foreigners, right? That were scattered across the four corners of the earth, right? Everybody, you know, everybody scoffs at us, right? But, you know, Islam, they don't scoff at Islam. Buddhism, they don't scoff at Buddhism, right? Those tiny top hat people, well, even Esau knows now, you know, those people are finished. But, you know, those people have protection, right? All these people have protection, but, you know, our protection comes from Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, right? But this world, they everything we do gets censored, they don't get censored. They can go off and say whatever the fuck they want, right? But we're the only people that are getting our videos censored, and that's how you know this is the truth. The Lord ain't dealing with these guys that have 700,000 subscribers, right? Like these guys like Truth Unedited, spreading out this folly, this nonsense, right? Guys like Captain Tazariak, guys like New Breed Global Truth, people that speak bad about the Israelite camps. They want to put them all under one basket, right? You have to go where the videos are often getting censored. That's going to be the truth, right? And those are our channels, and that spirit, that's a spirit, because our channels are getting censored, so much to the point where, the famine of the word is coming, and they're just going to completely shut everything down at one point, and then that's when no one's going to be able to get them scriptures, right? But like I was saying before, in the movies they show that they show there's always a couple people panicking, and then one guy knows the scriptures, and then they're trying to ask that guy what's up, what's going on, right? I forgot the name of the movie, but it was the movie with that one guy from what's his name, Seth MacFarlane and Jonah Hill, I think. It was called like The End of the World or something. But it was they had a bunch of celebrities, and they're all going to this one guy for the scriptures, right? He was the only guy bringing out, I believe it was the Revelation, I believe he was bringing out something like that. But I can't fully recall because I watched it quite a while ago now. But the point is, it's not going to get to that point where we're gonna that's it. We're not going to be how to say, it can get to that point, but it's we're there's not going to be any how you say it, that's it. There's not going to be no more YouTube. We're going to be, a lot of us are going to be missing. We're not going to be there to tell people what's up, because a lot of us are going to be hiding out. We're going to be gone by that time, right? For that short period, right, before we get beamed up, Lord willing, by those chariots, right? But once that famine of the word hits, we're not going to be going around. The Lord's going to put a spirit on us, on His men, to just stop teaching, right? Because these people had the opportunity to learn this stuff, and and then they refused it during that time. So now we're going to continue to feed the sheep, but that's it, right? But this man's kingdom, it's really coming to an end, right? It's finished, man. And you're seeing this happen right now, right in front of you. And we're gonna keep saying it over and over and over again, So, Lord willing, this was edifying. I'm gonna say, call Allah Yahweh Bashim Shai Bashim Kodesh. Double honors to the apostles and elders at Great Millstone who taught me this truth. Peace and salutations to the Lord's elect and the 1/3. Shalom.